Hello, and welcome to Beyond Books, where we talk about books and always go beyond. I'm your host. I'm Renee. This is the co-host, Raina. And today we're going to talk about the 14th banned book that I've read this year so far, on my way to 24 banned books in 2024. And that book is The Diary of a Young Girl by Anne Frank. I read this as a buddy read with Daniela of Uncommon Reader, and I will put a link to her review video below so you can watch both of our reviews. This book was first published in Holland in 1947. It was first published in the United States in 1952. It was made into a play in 1955 and a movie in 1959. I think you probably have a sense of the story of Anne Frank, even though you may not have read the book. Anne Frank is a young Jewish girl. She is between the ages of 13 and 15 when she wrote the diary. And she lives with her family in Amsterdam. However, they are from Germany originally. The family left Nazi Germany, and initially they were a bit freer in Amsterdam. However, the Netherlands eventually fell to the Nazis as well, and the family ends up hiding out in a warehouse in a small area that has an entrance which is hidden from view by a large cupboard. Of course, they have friends on the outside who are able to bring them food and other essentials, but they're unable to go out at all. Since they are Jewish, they must wear a yellow Star of David on their clothing, and if they're caught not wearing it, they'll be arrested. And of course, wearing it, they're at risk of being taken into custody and brought to one of the concentration camps. So it's one of those interesting situations where Anne knows that she is very lucky, on the one hand, to be hidden in the warehouse. However, it is still very difficult for her as a young girl. There are many heartbreaking passages about her wish to return to school and just to be outside. But the family can barely risk even being near the window. And oftentimes they sit in the dark, quietly, fearful to make a move or to make any noise at all. So Anne receives this diary shortly after the family goes into hiding in June of 1942. She receives it for her 13th birthday. She addresses the diary as Kitty. So instead of saying Dear Diary, her entries start with Dear Kitty. Apparently, Frank had a pre-war friend called Kitty. However, she doesn't otherwise write about this friend, so no one is really sure where the name comes from. Maybe she just liked it. It is kind of cute because otherwise Anne Frank's voice is very sophisticated. The way she writes and the things she comprehends and understands seem advanced to me, in some ways at least, for a 13 to 15-year-old girl who is being hidden away and is denied her usual social circle. And if you remember back to your adolescence, that circle is very important at that age. So Anne Frank makes astute and intelligent observations about the others who are hiding with her. This includes her mother, father, and sister, another family that consists of a mother, father, and an older teenage son, and another gentleman who is unrelated to either family. Anne has a close relationship with the other family's son. His name is Peter, but she ultimately concludes that he is not her kindred spirit. So again, that is some very adolescent thinking. She also writes about the family's scares and close calls, times when someone enters the warehouse area unexpectedly and the family hunkers down, hoping that no one heard anything that would make them suspicious. Uh, as the war rages on and more people are arrested and sent away, the family's outside resources become scarcer and scarcer, and they are forced to eat spoiled food in order to survive. Anne's observations and attitude are always interesting and lively. You can't help but like and admire her. Anne Frank's voice is important. Why? Well, between 1933 and 1945, Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party controlled Germany, transforming it into a totalitarian dictatorship. Many people, in addition to the Jews, were arrested and sent to concentration camps, including Romani people, Slavs, homosexuals, liberals, socialists, communists, other political rivals, Jehovah's Witnesses, Freemasons, and anyone refusing to work, anyone considered undesirable in any way, including Christians and Christian church members who opposed the regime. Education was controlled very carefully. The arts were banned or canceled as the focus was more on racial biology, population policy, and fitness for military service. That was the focus. Genocide, mass murder, and large-scale forced labor became hallmarks of the regime. The implementation of the regime's racial policies culminated in the Holocaust. Eventually, 6 million Jews were killed during the Holocaust and millions of others as well. Yet the diary of Anne Frank is number 62 on the American Library Association's list of banned and challenged books for the decade 2010 to 2019. So here we have a charming, endearing, highly intelligent book written about an important event in our world history. Why is it banned? So here I'm quoting from the website study.com, and it says, there have been numerous attempts to have the Diary of Anne Frank banned, usually in specific school districts. The first attempt to get Anne Frank's book banned came in 1982. Parents in Wise County, Virginia, objected to the descriptions of Frank's anatomy, the romantic feelings she expressed for a female friend, and her burgeoning sexual feelings. In 1983, in Alabama, there was a push to ban the book because people thought it was too depressing for younger readers. That particular line of reasoning did not get much traction, as the book is widely recognized as a crucial text about the horrors of the Holocaust. So apparently there is a version of the book where the description of her anatomy was left out. As for the romantic feelings towards a female friend, that seems to me to be more of an admiration for that person than anything that I would consider to be sexual in any way. But here we have a young teenage girl, and of course she's wondering about sex and sexuality and romantic love. It makes perfect sense. These are part of her thoughts, and they are appropriate and expected for her age group. So that doesn't seem to me to be a reason to ban. More recently, a Texas teacher was fired because she assigned her 8th graders to read The Diary of Anne Frank, and that was a graphic adaptation that had come out. The given reason was that the passages in which Frank describes her own body and thoughtfully considers her own sexuality. So this is from now a transcript of Ali Velshi's show on MSNBC, where he discusses banned books. And he's talking here specifically about the banning of the graphic adaptation of this diary. And he says, when we choose this adaptation of Anne Frank's story as a Velchi Banned Book Club feature, we discussed how much of the Texas teacher's story we wanted to cover. We decided to focus more on the contents of the book, the power of the word, and what diary represents. Why? Because it's exhausting and tedious to hear disingenuous words like uncomfortable or pornographic used to justify the attacks on such crucial and seismic literature. Wow. Well, I get that, Mr. Velchi, because I get tired of it too. So many of these books are important in so many ways. Yet people often ask, why is it banned? I mean, that's not a bad question in and of itself, but the reason is so unimportant compared to the enormity, the sheer depth and breadth of the work itself. What's most important is, what are we going to do about it? Are we going to continue to allow this? Parental rights? Sure. But what if I want my child to read such an amazing work of literature? Let's consider the words of Anne Frank herself, who even under pressure and threat of torture and imprisonment writes, "It's a wonder I haven't abandoned all my ideals. They seem so absurd and impractical. Yet I cling to them because I still believe, in spite of everything, that people are truly good at heart." Understandably, this is the most quoted passage from her diary. So, what happened to Anne Frank and her family? In May 1945, after only 12 years, the Allies defeated Germany and entered the capital, Berlin, ending World War II in Europe. So ended the Nazi regime. On the 6th of June, 1944, the Allied forces commenced the Normandy landings in France. The group was aware of this development. Now, this is the group that is with Anne, and hopeful for eventual liberation. On the 4th of August, 1944, 6 weeks before the Allies breached the Belgian-Dutch border, the group was discovered and deported to Nazi concentration camps. They were long thought to have been betrayed, although there are indications that their discovery may have been accidental, that the police raid had actually targeted ration fraud. And the outside groups that were helping them were working with ration coupons in order to get the family what they needed to live. So Anne and some of her family were brought to Auschwitz. However, she was later moved to the Bergen-Belsen concentration camp in Nazi Germany. She died of typhus in that camp at the age of 15. Of the 8 people who hid out together, only Otto Frank survived the war. That is the father, Otto Frank. I'm going to read a short excerpt from page 280 of the book. This is part of the afterword, and it tells of a night in Belsen camp where Anne is brought to the fence to speak with an old school friend of hers. Her name is Lise Gusen, and she lived a long life into her 90s. She wrote her own book called My Best Friend, Anne Frank, the inspiring and heartbreaking true story of best friends torn apart and reunited against all odds. Let's see if I can read this without having to turn up the light. At Belsen, Anne found her school friend, Lise Gussens. I waited shivering in the darkness, Lise related, of the night when Anne was brought to her. It took a long time, but suddenly I heard a voice. Lise, Lise, where are you? It was Anne, and I ran in the direction of the voice. And then I saw her beyond the barbed wire. She was in rags. I saw her emaciated, sunken face in the darkness. Her eyes were very large. We cried and cried, for now there was only the barbed wire between us, nothing more, and no longer any difference in our fates. I told Anne that my mother had died and my father was dying, and Anne told me that she knew nothing about her father, but her mother had stayed behind in Auschwitz. Only Margot, that was Anne's sister, was still with her, but she was already very sick. Thank you for watching.